You're listening to the Relationships Uncomplicated podcast. Relationship advice so valuable, you won't believe it's free. And now your host, relationship expert, Idit Sharoni.
I'm Idit Sharoni, licensed marriage and family therapist, affair recovery expert, and host of the Relationships Uncomplicated podcast. I've spent the past decade helping hundreds of couples heal after infidelity. Not just survive it, but rebuild relationships stronger than ever. I turned my private practice into a high-impact recovery program that's guided people around the world through the hardest chapter of their lives. Here, we don't sugarcoat the healing process, but we do believe it's possible. In every episode of Relationships Uncomplicated, I use my clinical experience or team up with one of my clinicians at Relationship Experts to bring you real guidance for real healing. We don't just talk about what's going wrong. We give you clear, actionable steps you can start using today. This isn't just about surviving betrayal. It's about growing stronger together. I am so glad you're here. Welcome to episode 85 of Relationships Uncomplicated. I'm your host, Idit Sharoni, and today we're diving into a crucial and potentially devastating topic for couples navigating the aftermath of infidelity. That's the tension between wanting to know and needing to heal. One of the most common challenges we see in the healing process is getting stuck in what we call the data collection phase. This phase, while important, can shift from being a step in recovery to an obstacle that delays healing, sometimes for months, years, or even indefinitely. To be more specific, I'm talking about hurt partners who are trying to gather information about the infidelity in an attempt to restore their lost sense of coherence. They're picking up scattered pieces, trying to connect the dots, hoping it will provide relief. And in this process, they often find themselves asking about specific details of the betrayal, sometimes asking the same questions again and again, or spiraling into a rabbit hole where one question leads to another. This can bring intense frustration, confusion, and even feelings of being gaslighted if their unfaithful partners are not able or not interested in providing answers. What starts as a search for clarity can quickly turn into a two-person crisis, leaving both the hurt partner and the unfaithful partner feeling even more disoriented and emotionally drained. So, how do you process information during infidelity recovery in a way that promotes healing? To help us unpack this in depth, I've invited someone who truly understands the complexities of infidelity recovery, Dr. Yael Haklai-Neagu, our clinical director here at Relationship Experts. Dr. Yael is not only a seasoned licensed marriage and family therapist, but also one of our expert coaches in our It's Okay to Stay Infidelity Recovery program. Together, we're going to explore why the need for details is so powerful and so common, what it means to be stuck in the data collection phase, whether staying in this phase is holding back your healing, and most importantly, actionable steps to gently move forward. This conversation has the potential to shift the way you approach your recovery, helping you gently uncover what might be keeping you stuck and offering a path towards deeper, lasting healing. This episode is sponsored by my Infidelity Recovery and Healing program, It's Okay to Stay. If you're struggling in the aftermath of infidelity but want to stay together, you can rebuild trust and heal through genuine expert help from me and my team personally. I started It's Okay to Stay after seeing couples therapy and self-help options often lacked essential components to help couples save their relationship after infidelity.
It's Okay to Stay is a complete 8-week coaching program that involves an online roadmap course and one-on-one work with an affair recovery specialist. So if you have faith in your relationship and you want to stay together and heal, let's talk. I'm offering a 45-minute free consultation for couples who want to save their relationship and need expert help. If that's you, just go online to iditsharoni.com/45 and pick a time for a video call that both you and your partner can commit to. I'll hop on. We're first going to start with understanding your struggle, and then we're going to walk through It's Okay to Stay to see if the program is right for you. Look, so many couples try therapy and self-help methods only to be put at odds with each other. But that doesn't have to be you. With expert help, It's Okay to Stay will give you the clarity that you need to understand each other, to heal, and to find a path forward past infidelity. So again, all you have to do to book your free consultation is to go to iditsharoni.com/45. That's iditsharoni.com/45. I'll be honored to stand alongside with you on this journey.
Hi, Dr. Yael. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with me as we try to shed some light on this issue.
Thank you so much, Idit, for having me. You and I been talking about this issue for a long time between us and work with our clients. So I'm really glad we finally get to have this conversation here and to share it with our listeners.
Yeah, I mean, it took us some time to to figure out exactly what we wanted to say about this because there is so much and we didn't want to overwhelm you.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess let's begin with defining what the data collection phase is.
Yes. So the data collection phase is the early stage when the partner who was unfaithful takes responsibility for offering full disclosure.
Mm-hmm.
It's about helping the hurt partner gather the information they need, what happened, when, where, with whom. This phase is crucial because it helps the hurt partner to start making sense of what happened and begin to regain a sense of clarity and coherence, like you mentioned earlier, Edith.
Right. So I guess when we talk about the data collection phase, we refer to it as the period that begins immediately after the infidelity is revealed and can sometimes extend for weeks, months, even years. And this phase is characterized by the hurt partner asking questions about the betrayal. The questions can range from essential facts like, when did it start? When did it end? Is it over? Did you have feelings? Was there unprotected sex? And so on and so forth. It can also include questions about the meanings and the motives, like why did you do it? And then it can go also into more granular or graphic questions, such as, I would say like the more granular would be like, what restaurant did you go to? What did you eat? And then the more graphic or gory, detail-oriented questions are, if there's been sex, like what sex positions did you do? Okay, so it can go to that level of detail. Now, this kind of questioning is completely normal in the immediate aftermath, okay? Most hurt partners, experience a profound loss of coherence. The narrative they believed about their relationship, about their life, has been shattered. And asking questions becomes a way for them to try and make sense of what happened, to understand the scope of the betrayal, and to regain some control. So it's normal and even important. However, if this pattern of questioning continues, but continues well beyond the initial crisis, even as the unfaithful partner is doing their part in the healing process, like they're answering your questions and they are expressing remorse and they act in trustworthy ways. Even in the face of that, if the questioning continues, then it can start to interfere with the recovery. What begins as a search for clarity can become a cycle of emotional re-injury, keeping both partners just stuck and preventing moving forward.
And it just just to clarify real quick, this isn't to say that the unfaithful partner doesn't still have, the responsibility to be honest and transparent. I just want to make sure that it's not misunderstood as a reason to avoid answering the hurt partner's question.
Yeah,
questions.
I mean, I agree 100%. One thing we were a little concerned about is we don't want the message coming out of this episode is that anybody, either a hurt partner thinking maybe I'm asking too many questions and I need to stop, and or maybe an unfaithful partner thinking or saying, this episode, these therapists, they're experts and they said you need to stop asking these questions. That's not the message.
Yeah. I wanted just to make sure we're all on the same page.
Exactly. Okay, so going back to, making sure we're not just talking about this on the surface. I think it would be really helpful to share some real life examples. That way our listeners and viewers can better understand what this phase is actually about, what it actually looks like when a couple is going through it. And maybe, Yael, maybe you can share an example without getting into too many details, but an example of a couple you worked with who found themselves stuck in this phase. I think hearing what it looked like in real life could really help our listeners relate and maybe even see some of their own experience in it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you that real life example would be useful here. And it actually reminded me of a couple I worked with a while ago. Working with them really helped me see how hurt partners, especially when they're in deep pain, how they can get pulled into the quicksand of collecting information about the affair, and how over time that search can become emotionally consuming and draining, and even start to stand in a way of healing.
Mm-hmm.
So I was working with this couple, let's call them Kelly and John. Mm-hmm. John had a 2-year affair with a coworker. And as you can imagine, Idit, a lot can happen over 2 years. Meetings in restaurants, out of the town trips, countless phone calls, gift and expenses, hundreds of text messages, you name it, right?
Makes sense.
So Kelly found out about the affair completely by accident, just by a text that popped up on John's phone while she happened to be holding it. Mm-hmm. And she had no idea he had been involved with someone else. And as you can imagine, the discovery was devastating and completely disorienting. Mm-hmm. And her world shattered in an instant. And she became desperate to regain a sense of coherence and control. And she felt like the only way to do it was to understand everything, every detail, every timeline, everything, all, Go ahead.
I really think that it's important to, probably a lot of people can find themselves in this, like the moment of revelation is so disorienting. It's like your sense of coherence. I always say your sense of coherence is gone, is lost. It's like, I don't know what I understand anymore. That's like the feeling that I hear from so many of our clients.
Yeah, like vertigo, like what are the sky or the ground, like where what's true, what's not. It's very disorienting. And she, as I mentioned, she really wanted to get every little detail to understand what's going on. But eventually I noticed that we were stuck. Kelly was drowning in data. digging through phone records, credit card statements, reading long messages. And look, like we mentioned a few times in this conversation, in the early stages, that makes sense. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But she was she was trying to protect herself from further hurt, trying to piece together what happened. But but as time went on, her needs for information became all-consuming. Less path to healing and more kind of forensic quest.
Mm-hmm.
And the deeper she dug, the more she uncovered, right? Like
Naturally. Mm-hmm.
Restaurants' names, hotel bookings, conversations they had over the years. And she kept telling me that if she could just find one last piece, maybe she finally believed John.
As so many of our clients do. That's the belief that if I just find this piece of information, if I just answer this question, then I'll be fine.
Then I'll believe him. Or maybe if she knew everything, she would not feel so foolish for not having missed the signs. But eventually it became clear that staying focused on the facts of the affair wasn't helping her moving forward. In fact, it was keeping her stuck mentally and emotionally, reliving the betrayal over and over.
Okay.
And I think what Kelly really struggled with was making the shift to the next phase of healing.
Mm-hmm.
The phase she could start asking deeper questions like, what did the affair mean? What were the dynamics in their relationship at that time? What led John, to make those choices?
Right.
And, and you and I know that this is where real healing starts, right? When you gain insight. But when you caught in this quicksand of details, it's really hard to take the next step.
Absolutely. Again, this is, one story of one couple, but this is something we see many, many times. Not always the story, but many times we find that couples are stuck in that place of that collection of data and the belief that the more you collect, the more calm you will be, the more able to heal you will be, the better emotional place you will be, which many times is not the case. And again, with the caveat of this is very normal, very understandable. We're not coming from the Olympus telling you not to ask these questions, not to look at bank records, not at all. We actually value transparency and we think it's very important. We just think that it may be a prolonged time of doing that could be harmful, and we'll tell you more about that later. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm sure people, listening to us right now, I'm sure they can find maybe parts of themselves or themselves in parts of that story. And I know this story reflects many of the stories that we experience with our clients. It really, really shows how easy it is to get stuck here and why it's so important to recognize it with compassion towards yourself and towards your partner.
Yeah.
And when I say towards yourself, I mean, as the hurt partner, don't judge yourself for wanting to know and for asking. Yeah. And as the unfaithful partner, don't judge your partner for wanting to know. Okay, so a lot of compassion is needed here. Yes. And for our couples and individuals navigating the aftermath of infidelity that are listening right now, and for those, wondering, how can I tell if the questions being asked and answers are part of a more healthy efforts to rebuild the hurt partner's sense of coherence, or if we've become stuck in that forensic data collection phase? So let's unpack some of the common behaviors we see during the phase and offer a bit more clarity around when it starts signaling stuckness rather than progress.
Yes, and I think the first thing would be seeking minute details that don't change the overall narrative. So going back to the story of Kelly, like thinking of like knowing all the names of the restaurants visited with their fair partner, it makes me think about a puzzle analogy that you use with your clients to explain it. And I was inspired by you and to use it with mine. I think, do you want to share it with the listeners?
Sure. Yeah. So, so this is one of the analogies that I use, right? And I think it explains this phase very well. I think of a puzzle, right? And I will say that this analogy changes depending on the case. So the framework is still a 1,000-piece puzzle, but maybe some of the details will change. So I'm going to give you one version of it. Trying to understand what happened in the aftermath of infidelity is a lot like putting together a 1,000-piece puzzle. Okay. So imagine you're working on a 1,000-piece puzzle. The image on the box is a castle sitting on a hill surrounded by green trees and clear blue sky. The image represents your sense of coherence regarding what happened. But then in a moment, so you still haven't assembled the puzzle. You have all the pieces on the table, and in a moment, the entire puzzle is knocked off the table, and the pieces scatter everywhere. Some land face down, others are stuck under the furniture. Your dog, is all over it, and basically, you're left with 1,000 pieces somewhere. Not on the table.
All over.
Exactly. So if we're going back to the hurt partner, what they'll immediately do is they will begin to try and pick up the pieces of that puzzle and desperately searching for as many as they can. This is the beginning of what we call the data collection phase. Okay, so the moment everything is scattered, that's the revelation. And then as you start picking up the little pieces and trying to find the pieces, that's the data collection phase or the beginning of it. Okay. And like we said, it's a natural response to trauma. Now, the hurt partner is going to do that by asking questions. When did it start? Did you love your affair partner? Was it physical? What did you do together? There are going to be a lot of questions, but these are the edge pieces, the framework that they need in order to rebuild a sense of what they're looking at. So you know how when you start building a puzzle, most people, it's like what we teach our kids to do is to first create the frame, and then you can put all the pieces back in. And so that's what hurt partners do. They start asking big, important questions in order to create that framework.
Yeah.
Then come the more detailed, often graphic or emotionally triggering questions. Like, where did you go? What did you eat? What sex positions did you use? Did you climax? And it goes on and on. So these are like the subtle shades of blue in the sky or the slightly different greens in the trees. If we're going back to the picture that I described before. So small details that feel crucial when you're trying to complete the picture. And now the hurt partner keeps building and rebuilding over and over again. Every time a new detail is uncovered or withheld, they question whether the entire puzzle is wrong again. Okay? They tear it apart and start from scratch, hoping this time it will feel whole. They believe they need all 1,000 pieces before they can rest and before they can trust what they see. But here's where the stuckness happens. Eventually, they may have enough of the puzzle assembled to recognize the image. They're able to see, they might not have all the pieces, but they can see a castle on a hill. There are some trees around it, and the sky is blue. The big picture is visible. They understand the betrayal, and they understand what happened. They see the emotional and factual landscape, and yet a few small pieces are still missing. And instead of stepping back and acknowledging the progress and seeing the big picture, right? The image they now can see, they stay in search mode. They can't stop looking for those last pieces, the exact shades of blues and greens. The healing really in that point, it remains on hold until the puzzle feels complete. And this can go for months and sometimes even years.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It reminds me of a client that said, I wish my partner stopped collecting the pieces and start assembling them, right? Like the collection phase can take so long.
Right. Then so with some couples, they're going to assemble something and then and then try to add more pieces to it. And with other couples, especially with the stuck couples, they won't even assemble anything until they have all the pieces.
Yep.
And so they might not even have an idea of any type of coherence around anything. They're going to feel so emotionally drained because they don't have all the answers yet. And until they have all of them, they are not even willing to start putting the picture, the puzzle back together. In this analogy, the hurt partner is the one rebuilding the puzzle, right? And that's a heavy responsibility that's on one person only. And if over time they're able to sit with the image they've reconstructed, even if a few pieces are still missing, they're often able to begin to truly heal. But if the goal becomes perfection, meaning finding every single piece of that puzzle, the process can shift from helpful to harmful.
Yeah.
Of course, this also depends on the unfaithful partner showing up with honesty. Like we said before, honesty, consistency, empathy. Without that, it's like trying to finish a puzzle with someone hiding the pieces. And that's not going to work.
Yeah.
So I guess the key question becomes, can the hurt partner reach a point where they say, I see the picture, I understand what happened, and even though some small pieces are missing, I can begin to heal now. That's the turning point. And that's what we want to help couples move forward towards. This is, by the way, exactly the kind of work we help our couples in our infidelity recovery program, It's Okay to Stay. Our experts, everyone that works with couples one-on-one, we are so trained in recognizing when partners are stuck in this space. Sometimes they come to us already stuck, and sometimes they get stuck during our work together. We're so trained in recognizing it and guiding them step by step towards clarity, healing forward, moving forward, being able to make something of what they already have. Again, depending on how long it has been going on, because if the revelation was just a week before or even a few months before, it really depends on what happened. I guess, because healing, it isn't about finding every last puzzle piece. It's about being able to look at the picture you've rebuilt and finally feel grounded enough to move forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, wow. I love this analogy, and it really helps me to explain my clients the understanding that you want to know what happened, right? Like, so that it was an affair, it was 2 years long, with a coworker. That's it. There is no need for what restaurants, what hotels, what other details, because it's like the shades of the blues and greens that you said.
Yes, and sometimes there is a need. It's not like we tell you, this is something you need and this is something you don't need. I actually sometimes even encourage people to ask detail-oriented questions, because sometimes your imagination goes farther than, the actual truth. Like, you imagine they're having this most amazing sex ever, And then the reality is, no, actually, it wasn't that great.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's okay to ask. But what we're encouraging people, I guess, is to notice, you know what, maybe we'll wait for it. We have some guidance for you later on.
Yes, but yeah, I really love this analogy. Let's go back to the common behaviors for a second. And another common behavior we see when people get stuck in this stage is asking the same question over and over again. And even if the answers haven't changed, and again, everything we say, it's common and it's normal, it makes sense. We talk about situations where it becomes extensive in a longer period of time. And when asking questions over and over again, it's not that the person asking is not listening. It's more about trying to make sense about something that feels so confusing. Remember, we talked about being disoriented. So something that feels so confusing or very painful. So you find yourself asking.
Right. You sometimes go back with the same question again and again and again, just to reconstruct your own sense of coherence. It's very normal. But
yes. And another one is struggling to accept some of the questions, might never get clear answers. Especially when the revelation, the affair happened many years ago, or it was a long one. So trying to recall details of things that happened years ago may not be always possible.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that I see, people also tend to get back to with messages, bank statements, phone records, social media comments. Even if they made some progress, it's like they're trying to double check the story or make sure they didn't miss something over a long period of time.
Yeah. It's like you used to double check. I'm thinking double dipping. It's like this going back again and again and again to the same records you already read 10 times, and how re-traumatizing that can be for you. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And, I cannot stress it enough. All these are normal reactions. It's the brain's way of trying to get a sense of control and to find closure. But when it's done too often or for a long time, it's actually can get in a way of healing.
Right. Yep. Agreed. Okay, so it is important to highlight this about two main things. So what I'm thinking about, if you're trying to wrap your head around what are the most important things that you have to think about, when you see these behaviors, I would say timing and details. So if it's done over a very long period of time, then that's a red flag. And if the level of details is, instead of becoming, you're asking about meanings and motives, you find yourself asking more and more and more about small, minute, sometimes insignificant details, like what did you eat at the restaurant or things like that, then that's another red flag. And these two red flags can tell you that you're stuck. So I guess the best way to recognize you're stuck in this phase is to pay attention to the above, what we said before, with consideration of time and type of question. And from what we see inside our practice, the biggest sign is that the hurt partner goes from frantic data collection right after the revelation to a day job interrogator, usually over a period of months and sometimes years after the revelation, regardless of any healing steps like trust building, remorse expressing, etc. Meaning like they could be making, and during our program, couples make progress because we take them through a roadmap to healing. And so a lot of things change. And people who are stuck in this phase will make that progress on one track, but they're going to have like another track where they're not making any progress because they're stuck in the data collection. So that is something we're trained to to notice, but I want you to kind of get trained in noticing about yourself and your own progress.
Yeah.
So if you identified yourself in any of the above patterns, guess you might be wondering how being stuck in this data collection phase is hindering my healing.
Yeah, and I think it's an important one. And first off, healing is not just about knowing what happened, right? It's about understanding why it happened.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are only focused on the facts, you are missing the emotional piece, and the emotional piece is that really where the healing begins.
Right. And again, if we're going back to that sense of coherence, right? We think of your sense of coherence being made of knowing some of the what, because we never really know everything about everything, right? That's impossible as human beings. We just cannot contain and know everything. So, but we have some knowledge of the what. And in many cases, we have a pretty good knowledge of the why. And so this is like the difference between drowning in details, right, that don't necessarily connect together versus connecting the dots, of maybe less details, but the ability to connect the dots and see something.
Yes, I completely agree. And it makes me think is another way that it can hinder healing if you're focusing only on the fact that it keeps all the attention on what the unfaithful partner did, which means that there is no room for the hurt partner to process their emotions, to figure out what they need to start healing or to start feeling safe again. Where all the focus is on the details.
Right. And all the focus is on the unfaithful or what they did instead of what your experience is. And so you could be emotionally drained, but you'll still continue to ask those questions and not connect between how this is impacting and making you feel actually worse instead of better. Your energy goes towards the investigation, not towards the healing.
Yes.
And so that it almost makes me feel many times, and I say that sometimes to my couples, this is not us trying to collect information to present to a judge in a trial, right? You're not there. This is, it's not going to work. It's not going to help you. Relationship is very different than a trial. And so, and even the healing after infidelity, there is no trial. If you go to trial, then you're probably on a divorce case. There's no trial, there's no judge. And you don't have to collect all the information like maybe an investigator would have to collect in order to bring it to, in front of the judge.
Yes, and I think thinking of what you just said brings me to think about another big one, that it's rumination, right? Mm-hmm. When you keep replaying the same details over and over, it usually doesn't bring clarity. Instead, it just fuels more anxiety and anger, and it keeps you stuck in that loop.
Absolutely. This is so, so important.
And we're talking about couples who want to stay together, right? So if a couple wants to stay together, getting stuck in this phase can really hold them back. It keeps them from rebuilding trust, reconnecting emotionally, and actually making progress towards this new version of the relationship that they're looking for.
Unfortunately, and again, we say that because we see it. We experience it all the time, and we really talked amongst ourselves, and we thought this is so important for people to know. Yeah. Why do you think people get stuck in this phase?
Wow. So I think first of all, it makes sense to me that people get stuck in this phase, and there's such a strong need for certainty, right? So the belief that if they can uncover every single detail, it will finally bring clarity. or, or closure. It's just like, it reminds me Kelly, right? Like, just like Kelly, the client I mentioned earlier. She kept thinking that one more answer would finally make it all make sense. One more detail, one more answer. But the truth is that kind of closure rarely comes from facts only. Like, if you look for closure, it doesn't come just from facts. And sometimes staying stuck in this fact-finding mode becomes a way to avoid the deeper emotional work. Like really sitting down with a betrayal and learn about what the betrayal means for them or for the relationship. It can feel, incredibly vulnerable and scary to do that. So people stay in the details versus going deep to the emotional part. Just to circle back to the couple I mentioned earlier, Kelly and John. Her shift began when she realized that gathering more and more pieces, like going back to the metaphor of the puzzle, gathering more and more pieces of information wouldn't bring the clarity she was seeking. What truly helped was starting to assemble those pieces together, start to see the picture and start to reflect on the picture and getting insight about the infidelity. Her main issue was to believing John, right? So she thought the more details she collects, then she can confirm that he's not lying. So if I have more and more and more and more, then confirming he's not lying. And what we did in our work, instead of like using this method of collecting data to confirm that, we shift to talk about John's tendency to lie and the dynamic of secrecy and dynamics of deception. So this is a big picture, right? This is assembling the pieces and reflecting on them, looking at them and start to understand what's going on. And that was the moment that she started gaining clarity and they made progress.
Yes. Okay. So I think we we clarified a lot of things about this data collection phase and when it becomes a little problematic or very problematic in many cases. But as always, we're not going to leave you without supports. If you're resonating with what we talked about so far, stay with us. We've got some clear, actionable steps to help you shift out of this phase and get unstuck. Those are coming up right after this message from our sponsor.
This episode is sponsored by my infidelity recovery and healing program, It's Okay to Stay. If you're struggling in the aftermath of infidelity but want to stay together, you can rebuild trust and heal through genuine expert help from me and my team personally. I started It's Okay to Stay after seeing couples therapy and self-help options often lacked essential components to help couples save their relationship after infidelity. It's Okay to Stay is a complete 8-week coaching program that involves an online roadmap course and one-on-one work with an affair recovery specialist. So if you have faith in your relationship and you want to stay together and heal, let's talk. I'm offering a 45-minute free consultation for couples who want to save their relationship and need expert help. If that's you, just go online to iditsharoni.com/45 and pick a time for a video call that both you and your partner can commit to. I'll hop on. We're first going to start with understanding your struggle, and then we're going to walk through It's Okay to Stay to see if the program is right for you. Look, so many couples try therapy and self-help methods only to be put at odds with each other. But that doesn't have to be you. With expert help, It's Okay to Stay will give you the clarity that you need to understand each other, to heal, and to find a path forward past infidelity. So again, all you have to do to book your free consultation is to go to iditsharoni.com/45. That's iditsharoni.com/45. I'll be honored to stand alongside with you on this journey.
Okay, welcome back. Let's dive into those actionable steps that we promised, because if you found yourself stuck in the data collection phase, there is a way forward, and we're here to help you take the next step. So here we go. Step number 1, get clear on why you're asking. Before each question, pause and ask yourself, am I asking this to gain clarity that will actually help me heal? Or am I trying to soothe anxiety and I can't seem to settle? If it's the latter, that's a signal to slow down. And sometimes what we need most isn't another answer, but emotional support for what we already know. That's kind of what Yael, you mentioned before about your client. It wasn't about getting more right answers, which if you sum it up together will equal my partner tells the truth. It was about getting the emotional support or some kind of support for her to understand what she already knew, which was his tendency to lie. And if we look into that, that's a deeper level. And that is healing.
Yes.
Right? Step number 2, look for repetition. Notice if you're asking the same questions over and over or circling back to information you already received. Now, this might be your mind trying to find safety, but it can also signal that you're stuck in a loop that no longer helps. Healing often begins when you start tolerating the discomfort of not knowing everything. And what I mean by that is, again, over time, I'm not talking about going back to the same question, let's say in the first days after the revelation, because you kind of forgot that you already asked this question, or because you asked the question, but then it made sense to you at some point, but then a couple of days after you thought about something else and all of a sudden it didn't make sense to you. So you come back with this. I'm not talking about that. I am talking about going back again and again and again for months to the same question or to a similar question, which should signal that you are stuck in a circle or a loop that isn't helpful because you keep getting the same answer and just a very frustrated partner on the other side. We talk a lot about, Yael, right, about tolerating the discomfort of not knowing everything. We call that being comfortable with the uncomfortable. It's something that we say a lot.
It's difficult, though. It's easier said than done.
So difficult, but possible.
Yeah.
Okay, step number 3, set a gentle boundary with yourself. Now, you don't have to gather all the pieces at once or ever. So ask yourself, what would it be like to pause here, sit with what I do know, and see how that feels, and see if I can settle for that and be okay with that, not just settle because I don't like settling.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want you to settle, but I want you to see if you can be okay with what you have. And sometimes the healing comes when we give ourselves permission to stop searching and start, feeling or start seeing some other things that are beyond, the actual detail that we're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Reflecting on the information that gathered.
Right. Step number 4 is communicate with intention. So if you're the hurt partner, let your partner know when you're feeling overwhelmed or when your questions are coming from a place of anxiety. Many times I tell my couples, before you ask the question, think, do I really want the answer? Mm-hmm. And in that case, you can say, I have a question and I don't need the answer. I just want you to know that I have this question. So if it's coming from a place of just overwhelmed, then maybe that's your answer. Maybe what you can do is just tell your partner, I need you to know I have this question. It's been on my mind. It's been troubling me. If you're the unfaithful partner, check in. Am I answering from a place of defensiveness or avoidance, or from a desire to help my partner feel safer and seen? Sometimes that by itself will resolve the problem. Because if you react with, I can't believe you're asking me this again, or I'll answer, but I just know that I answered it 89 times before, or I can answer this, but I already gave you this answer, or I don't think you should ask this question because, it's going to be traumatizing for you. Any one of those reactions is answering from a place of defensiveness, and that is only going to make the questions and needing to know details worse and worse and worse.
Yeah. You want to be generous and kind with your partner in pain.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Generous. I love this word. And then step number 5, and I don't know if there are any other steps after that, but this one is kind of important. Get support from someone who knows this work. This phase can really be hard to navigate alone, even as a couple. And so working with someone who knows this work, like a therapist, infidelity coach, infidelity recovery expert. And we have some ideas about, who are the people you can work with in one of our other episodes. You can look for that. But the ones that really can help you recognize when you're stuck, why you're stuck, and how to move through it in a way that actually promotes healing for both of you.
Yeah, and you know what? I mentioned it earlier. It can be a quicksand, right? And when you're in this loop and when you're drowning with pain and the need to know, sometimes you need a third party to pull you out of this quicksand and help you regain coherence.
Right. And sometimes it needs to be someone from the outside who knows what they're doing, because if they don't know, they can fall in that quicksand with you.
Yes, I agree.
It just make it worse for all of you. So you want someone that knows what they're doing. They know how to get people out of those, muddy, kind of mud or whatever it is that that would get you to drown. Yeah. Okay, one thing I really want you to remember is being stuck doesn't mean you're failing.
No.
You can move past it. I mean, we've done it so many times with so many couples that I can certainly tell you, even if you're stuck here, you can move past it. You just maybe sometimes need someone to help you with that. As we wrap up today's episode, I just want to say this. If you're in the data collection phase right now, please know that you're not broken and you're not alone. Wanting answers is a completely human response to betrayal. But healing isn't found in every single detail. It's found in the process of making meaning, rebuilding safety, and learning how to move forward together. A heartfelt thank you to you, Dr. Yael Haklai-Neagu, for joining me today and sharing your insights so generously. I know Dr. Yael's words brought a lot of clarity and comfort to those of you who are listening and watching us. And if this episode resonated with you and you're looking for more guidance, I invite you to explore our infidelity recovery program, It's Okay to Stay. Our expert coaches are trained to help couples exactly where you are, especially when things feel stuck and overwhelming. You can learn more about our program or schedule a free consultation with us at iditsharoni.com/45. That's iditsharoni.com/45. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Idit, for having me. I always love to come here and chat with you about things we're so passionate about, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate you spending the time with me today. And for our listeners, thank you for being here. And if you found this episode helpful, please consider leaving a review, sharing it with someone who may need it, or subscribing so you don't miss a future episode. Until next time, I'm Idit Sharoni, and this is Dr. Yael Haklai-Neagu, and this is Relationships Uncomplicated. Take good care. Bye.
Bye.